Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Functionally Autoimmune. We have a fantastic guest on the show today. With us today, we have Norman Plotkin. He is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, an author, and the founder of Norman Plotkin Hypnotherapy. Hi, Norman. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Norman, can you tell us a little bit how you got into hypnotherapy? What kind of led you in that direction? And then kind of, just a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, in the words of the Grateful Dead, a long, strange trip it's been. I'm on about my fourth life.
Okay.
Out of high school, I didn't go to college right away. I went in the Marine Corps, worked in the oil fields, a rock plant like Fred Flintstone, making little rocks out of big rocks. And then I was climbing telephone poles, building cable TV. And then my brother was killed in a car accident, and it kind of woke me up. And he was pre-med, college, and I faced my own mortality, and I ditched all that, moved back in with my mom and started college, walked on to a community college, knocked out the associate degree in a year and a half, and speech and debate and student government, and then transferred to university. It happened to be Sac State here in the California state capital. I was a government major. They don't call it political science there. And first semester in, I had a paid internship.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of a 25-year career, from clerk to consultant. I managed campaigns a little bit, and then after being the committee consultant for the health and insurance committees in the state assembly, I got hired by the California Medical Association as a lobbyist. And so I lobbied for the Medical Association for several years. And then I went out on my own. And for not quite 15 years, I had my own lobbying firm representing clients before the California legislature. And I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love the public policy and the strategy and whatnot. And I made a lot of money and prestige and, all of that, big ego. But I got sick, and I got papillary carcinoma, which is thyroid cancer. Interestingly, the throat chakra, I didn't have my own voice. I spoke for others, and this is where I was afflicted. And so I knew hundreds of doctors. I'd been a lobbyist for the Medical Association. I followed the allopathic way of, therapeutic recommendations of cut, burn, and poison. And I just wanted to get back to normal.
Right.
And what I realized was that my normal was what made me sick.
Sure.
And I didn't make any changes. I went back to drinking and eating, out all the time, rich food, high stress. And it came back, and I had to have another round of radiation, and it blew up my life. It's never just about the cancer. My ex-wife didn't handle it well. We were business partners. So my marriage didn't survive it. And my kids were scared. And so, I remember looking out of the window of the hotel room where I was sequestered after being radiated, and seeing their scared little faces as they waved at me from the parking lot. But so I had a friend who got out of politics and opened a yoga studio. Wow. She took me through therapeutic yoga for cancer, and taught me Ayurveda principles and my dosha, and how to eat for my dosha, my constitution. Yeah. And she taught me how to meditate. And my overactive mind that made me a great analyst and lobbyist was not so good when you're in the throes of disease.
Yeah.
And 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, when the walls close in on you, and there's no doctor available to answer your questions and to assuage your fears. And so I knew fear for the first time. I grew up on a ranch riding bulls. I was a Marine. Like I didn't even know I was only 5'7" until I got knocked down,
Right.
by the cancer. So, when I turned inward, and teachers began to appear, first of which was Gene, my yogi. And I began to meditate and go inward. And I read books like Wayne Dyer's Power of Attention, Intention, Carol Neese, Anatomy of the Spirit, Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing, others like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Dr. Brian Weiss, many began to appear. And so I found my way to a Hay House conference in Pasadena and was just lit on fire.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was divinely guided. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had gone down there and lined up a job that was similar to what I was an executive director of a trade association, and it just was, they didn't renew my contract after a year. I'm like, what is going on? And I just felt kind of divinely guided to this college of hypnotherapy in the Valley in LA. And so I joined without ever having been hypnotized. I had seen this, I was looking at coaching and whatnot, and I had seen this ad by these two psychologists who said, if you really want to fill your coaching practice, add hypnosis in, because if people feel like you're doing something for them, it's a greater value. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. But they were in New Hampshire, and it was a week-long course. That's when I created my interest, and I found this College of Hypnotherapy, nationally accredited in Tarzana, Los Angeles County. And that was more akin to what I needed, an 18-month with residency and a substantive course of study. And so I jumped in, like I said, without ever having been hypnotized, but the credibility was there, and the substance was there, and I felt divinely guided.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I feel like so many of us that are kind of in the area of helping other people have been led to this through some type of our own healing journey or our own illnesses or things like that. So it's really interesting to hear that that was part of your journey as well, is that you kind of had this illness and then this kind of reawakening that kind of led you to what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's called a shamanic healing crisis, and Chiron, the celestial body, is involved, and you're called to do this. You see, cancer is a message. If you don't hear it or understand it, you'll be reassigned, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement. I really like that. So I want to get into a little bit about what hypnotherapy is, because I know a lot of people have heard about it, know that it's out there. A lot of people, maybe have tried it for various things, such as, quitting smoking or PTSD or things like that. And then there are other people who have considered it, but haven't quite made the leap. So can you tell us a little bit about hypnotherapy, and what does it really do, and what does it work for?
Yeah, so it's dangerous you have to be careful about how you describe it, because it sounds like a panacea, and it is, because the subconscious mind controls everything, just like my thyroid, was my whole metabolic process, but it was controlled by the subconscious mind too. So hypnosis is a deep relaxation with focused concentration. That's it.
Yeah.
It's akin to the dream world.
Right.
It's the closest thing to a dream that you'll experience not being asleep. Many people feel like they fell asleep in the chair, and they said, I think I fell asleep. I said, well, why do you say that? And I said, I heard myself snore. And I said, well, when you're sleeping at night, do you hear yourself snore? And they said, no. Snoring is an operation of deep relaxation, not sleep.
Yeah.
So most people are afraid of it. And they're afraid for this reason. They believe it's a loss of control, because their introduction to it has been through witnessing a stage show in Vegas or at the county fair, or they saw the movie Get Out, or countless other shows and movies that have made fun of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, because it's an easy thing to make fun of. For centuries, people didn't trust it. They did, they Franz Mesmer in the 18th century, they mesmerized people, and there was a whole court of inquiry. Benjamin Franklin had been part of the King Louis XIV's court of inquiry as to whether there was, something to this stuff, and they discounted it, just like modern evidence-based medicine discounted it, until recently. They can no longer discount it, because we have imaging technology like functional MRI.
Yeah.
And now folks like Dr. David Spiegel at Stanford and others, many others in the UK and in the US, are understanding through imaging what's going on in the brain when you're in a state of trance or hypnosis or focused concentration and deep relaxation. So the part of the mind, in the frontal cortex that causes you to pay attention, kind of goes to sleep, and so you don't kind of pay attention to those things. At the same time, the part of your brain that controls your connection to your body kind of rests, and those two parts sync up. That's why your heart rate will slow, your breathing will become slower and more regular. And so we now know that there are physiological changes. We know what the brain is doing and why it's receptive to your suggestions. Basically, I'm disconnecting you from your body. I'm gonna overload you with message units, and at some point you're just gonna escape me.
Wow, that's really powerful. And we've talked about on this show, and you kind of alluded to it as well, that there is this really strong kind of mind-body connection. Everything in our body's connected. As much as we like to think of it compartmentalized as like, certain things, it's really not. It's all very connected. So in the realm of like, chronic illness, things like cancer, things like autoimmune disease, where would hypnotherapy really come into that type of treatment or, managing those types of illnesses?
Well, again, across the spectrum. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a woman who came to me with fibromyalgia.
Sure.
9 years. For 8 years, doctors had said, you symptom pills. I'm sorry, all we can do is help you manage your pain.
Yeah.
And after 8 years, she ditched the pills. It wrecked her life. She barely was holding on to her professional job. And I had known her a long time. I'd worked with her in the legislature. And so, so she ditched the pills on her own, but was still just was struggling. So we did a series of 6 sessions. I got to know her. Counseling and interviewing is a very critical piece of what I do. So because most of the time you see an allopathic practitioner, they don't have, in 5 minutes, they can't take a deep dive into your history.
Right.
They don't ask you. And you know what? And one of the critical things I did in session 2, maybe 3, I asked her, what was going on in your life when this started?
Yeah.
And no one had asked her that. Turns out she had gone through a bitter divorce, and there was a child involved. And she had been in the Air Force, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, single mom, raised by a single mom, become a single mom.
Sure.
Tough exterior.
Right.
But as I got to know her, I realized that she was a marshmallow inside. And she projected that strength because really she was soft inside. And so what she had done was somatized the emotional pain into her body. She knew she could take that physically, but emotionally she was a wreck. So she put that pain into her body. Mm-hmm. And that's what it became, a series of, symptoms related to the shutdown of her immune system because she was carrying that emotional pain in her body. Mm-hmm. So I asked her, are you ready to get rid of this? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
If you could get rid of it today, would you? She said, if I could get rid of it, I'd have done it a long time ago. I'm like, but if you could, would you?
Yeah.
She said, yeah. I'm like, okay. So in about the 4th or 5th session, I took her deep into hypnosis, and I had asked her all the things she would do if she was free of this. And I knew where she felt it in her body and all these things. So I had her, I did an arm stiffening. I hold her arm out like this and I support it. And I said, okay, I want you to put all your pain, all your suffering, everything you've experienced that has hurt you over the years, all your pain, suffering, grief, all of it, put it in your arm, make it stiffer as a rod, let it go. I got real paternal and I had her put all the pain in the arm and she let it go.
Yeah. And
then I had her begin to envision what it would be like living without this pain. And I went through the litany of things that she would do, very specifically from the friends she would go out with and where she would go and the things that she would do. And I had her see it, had her envision her doing it, feeling it in her body with no pain and doing these things that she always wanted to do. She wanted to box. She wanted to do, so,
Yeah.
and then I said, all right, when you're ready to let this go so that you can return to all of the things that we just discussed, your arm will begin to lift and rise.
Mm.
Lifting, rising, rising, lifting, lifting, rising. Your arm will begin to lift and rise, demonstrating to you that your body's ready to let go of this pain once and for all. Lifting, rising, rising, lifting. And I did this, and nothing happened. And when I was a junior hypnotherapist, I'd have been mortified. What do I do now?
Right.
But I've been doing this for a number of years now, and I've seen a lot. So I just gave her time, because there's time distortion in hypnosis. Lift and rising, rising, lifting, lifting, rising. Your arm lift and rise when you're ready to let go of this pain. Rising, lifting, lifting, rising. See yourself now pain-free. Lifting and rising. Have your arm demonstrate to you that your body really is ready to get rid of this. And after an excruciating amount of time for me, not for her, she's in time distortion.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, her arm began to lift and rise and rise and lift. And then here she is. So she's in hypnosis, she's got like this, and her arm sticking out like this. I said, very good. You're now ready to let go of this pain. You don't need it anymore. Express gratitude. Thank it. It protected you from something.
Yeah.
So let's just be grateful for whatever it was that provided, and let it go now. And then I brought her up, and the first thing she saw was that her arm was sticking straight up. So now she connected consciously with the subconscious demonstration that she was ready to let this go.
Yeah.
And so I put a week between these, and I put 2 weeks between this one, and I pinged her by text. I'm like, you ready for your next session? And she right away, yes. And I'm holding my breath. What do you want to work on? And she said, motivation. I've been depressed for so long, I can't get my ass out of bed. I'm ready to go. I got to get it. I'm like, woo. And so we worked on motivation and helping her get up out of bed. And the next thing I know, she's on social media. She's all over the place, all over the map. I can see, because we're connected on Instagram or something. And
Yeah.
man, she's on fire. And so that's autoimmune. And because it's never about the autoimmune symptoms, it's about an emotion. The body somatizes the emotional pain from some. And so I'm really good in my counseling and interviewing, going back, because trauma is cumulative, and we got to get to where the original trauma was. And you can resolve that. Because we hold on to things, we have this inner protector, and we hold on to these things because the subconscious mind, the same subconscious mind that keeps you physiologically in homeostasis, 98.6, whatever your 60 beats per minute, and running all involuntary operations, the same subconscious mind keeps you in behavioral homeostasis. You don't have to keep learning how to ride a bike.
Right.
You don't have to keep learning how to drive a stick shift.
Yeah.
And so this threat that happened 15 years ago, you created behavior.
Yeah.
And that person may be dead.
Right.
The threat long gone. But the behavior's there as a defense mechanism. And and the subconscious mind is deathly afraid to let go of it, because that means you're exposed to that threat, right? So in the cancer setting, like, I do not tell people ditch your doctor and don't, what I do is I help connect them with their body. Cut, burn, and poison is, these are your cells. The mutations, like, you can't treat it like an invading enemy. The war on cancer, it's not a war, it's you. Yeah. And so let's go back and do a review of your traumas. Let's figure out, because there in the 70s, there was a physician called named Dr. Carl Simonton. He was a radiological oncologist. He'd seen a lot of people with cancer. And he came up with a theory that the trauma is cumulative, right? And so at some point, the cumulative trauma overloads the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind perceives death as a way out of the pain. And this is all under the radar. You're not thinking this. You're not conscious about that. Subconscious mind perceives death as a way out of the emotional pain, and begins to shut down your immune system. Right. In which, at which time, a healthy immune system is activating against mutations and doing, our immune processes, right? But if we just want to check out because the emotional pain is just too much, if we've given up, I'm sure people have just given up because it's just it's so painful. And so that was his. So I do a review of their traumas, help them
Right.
relieve and release repressed emotions, connect them
Oh,
with the emotional pain that they've shoved in their body. I can tell by where they put it, you know,
right.
it comes up in the legs, you can't run away from your problem. Arms, you can't fight your way out. Back, you're carrying the weight of the world.
Yeah.
Your organs, tell me what organ is it? Tells
Right.
me a lot. The lungs is
Yeah.
fear. The breast is sadness. You know,
Right.
so there's a lot. So I connect you with your body. I have you trust and put your trust and cooperation with your medical team, and you're all a team, and they know what they're doing, and you're going to be part of the team and trust, and you're going to work closely with your body, and your body's going to cooperate. And you're going to the chemo is going to be well tolerated,
Yeah.
and your body's just going to respond in fantastic ways. I'll take you into the control room of your mind and have you work at the control board, turning the lever up and dial down, and
Yeah.
just it's engagement is what it is. You see,
Yeah.
because going to a second opinion where you're told, doing what you're told, this is disempowering. What role do I have? It's my cancer. What role do I have in this whole process? No
Exactly.
one. Well, allopathic medicine doesn't give you a role in your own healing. If you say, doctor, heal me, you're not going to fare well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And we talk about this kind of reminds me, and tell me if I'm way off base, but we talk a lot about kind of manifestation. Like we manifest what we want in our life, but we also kind of manifest what happens to us in our bodies. And so there's kind of this constant manifestation. And as you mentioned before, you had thyroid cancer because you felt like you were constantly speaking for other people, but not really for yourself. And I can relate to that, and the fact that I had because I've reversed it, but I had Hashimoto's, which is also a thyroid condition. And previously I was someone who very much never spoke up for herself. I was always kind of sure out whatever makes everybody happy. And it really was something that I had to learn over time, that's kind of what manifested for me was, okay, you have to learn how to speak up for yourself.
Yeah,
And so it
the fifth
absolutely,
chakra.
yeah, for sure. And so it's definitely this kind of powerful mindset manifestation that really has the power to either make us sick or make us better. And do you feel like that's kind of a big part of what's happening with so many people and why hypnotherapy is so powerful?
Absolutely. So it's dangerous. You have to be very careful. You have to know who you're talking about before you tell them that they produce their own cancer.
Yeah,
And not everybody's open to that. I've offended people.
yeah,
And not everybody wants help.
right.
Like man, the hardest thing for me was meeting this person who was bleeding rectally.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I can help you. I'm all right.
yeah,
You're all right. Okay, all right. And so I had to let go. So absolutely, the body keeps the score. It's a great book.
yeah,
We are listening to our thoughts. Our self-talk is critical, and we're surrounded by fear. Comes at us from everywhere,
yeah,
and we live. There's a lot of victimhood going on, and pointing outward. Everyone's fault but my own.
yeah,
And so, I'm pretty direct. I'm not for everyone.
right.
You work with me, and we're going to explore your role in this, and look for ways for you to take responsibility for things that have happened in your life, and ways that you can engage yourself in your own healing. And first of all, are you ready? Do you want to heal?
Right.
People, there's a thing called secondary gain, and people hold on to things because they get something.
Yeah,
Sympathy, empathy, attention. So I'm always very clear. Are you ready?
yeah,
Are you ready?
right.
This is NLP. So I want them in the yes mindset.
Yeah,
So yes, hypnotherapy is very powerful because it's a reordering of your subconscious programming. And so
yeah,
this stuff is laid down between 0 and 8. You're not even aware of it. Things like, things you hear your parents say, money doesn't grow on trees. Why can't you be more like your sister?
right.
And this stuff gets laid down and you don't even know it's going on. Like when I hear things and I connect dots, and then people are like, how did you know that? And I'm like, well, I just asked you. I just listened. You're too close to it. I'm at arm's length. I'm looking for these things. You're not.
Right.
I'm sifting through the grains of sand of your life, looking for little nuggets that give me a clue as to why you might have developed this.
Yeah.
And they're there. If you're
Right.
open and honest with me, people are worried that they're going to blurt all of the deepest, darkest secrets out in hypnosis. I'm like, you don't say anything over there. You're in the dreamland. I want you to say it there in the chair while I'm interviewing you. That's what, this is where you pour out your deepest, darkest secrets. This is privilege. I can't tell anybody unless you say you're going to hurt yourself or someone else. I can't, it's confidential.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think that's important for people to know too, is that they're not going, because I do think you mentioned earlier that a lot of people associate it with things they saw on like a stage or something. So I do think sometimes people think that they have no control and they're going to be doing something crazy or being asked to do something that they wouldn't normally do or say. And that's not necessarily the reality of what you're trying to do, right?
no, not at all. In fact, I have people say, I felt like I could open my eyes at any time. I'm like, that's characteristic of trance. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you were counting me up and I could open my eyes at 3, but I didn't. I'm like, because you were in trance. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, yeah, of course you could. And I told you that at the beginning. Like, if anything in this process makes you uncomfortable, you could open your eyes and say, stop. You won't, because it's the most comfortable, relaxing thing I have ever experienced. I have wound up lawyers who come in once a month because it's the only time they can relax.
Yeah.
And it's the dream world. Your mind gets to go places. In fact, I encourage you, let your mind wander.
Yeah.
And you'll be lost in some thought, just like you would if you were trying to meditate. You're down the bunny hole of 7 layers into a thought process. You started with breakfast, and all of a sudden now you're at the Indy 500 or whatever. And so and that's perfectly fine. And then you'll check in. It's like, oh, why is he saying that? What does that mean? Like, am I really on a cloud? And so this is the thought process that you're going through. And then all of a sudden you hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes open, wide awake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes open, wide awake. And you go, wow, was that really 35 minutes?
Right.
And everyone leaves better than they came.
Right.
And that's, so, so I wanted to call my first book The Unwrapped Gift, because just like my brother's death, I came to realize it was a gift, because it opened my eyes and it took me in directions I never would have, took me out of my comfort zone, took me in directions of growth that I never would have explored absent some kind of shock, And so, but my publisher said, Norm, cancer probably was a gift for you, but how long did it take you to figure that out? I'm like, yeah, it was a few years. She says, if you want to help people who are in it, you got to meet them where they are. And when they're in it, they're not thinking it's a gift. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So it became Take Charge of Your Cancer, the 7 Proven Steps to Healing and Recovery, which is empowering, because engagement is super critical. Again, we blame the world around us. Why did this happen to me? Why is this happening to me?
Right.
Instead of, what did I do to create this?
Yeah.
How can I stop? And remember, I told you, I just wanted to get back to normal. I had to come to the realization that my normal was what made me sick.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wow. This is very powerful stuff. And I could talk about it all day, but I know that, you have other things to do, but I want to make sure that we give you time to share, where can people find you? How can people reach out to you if someone wants to work with you? Where do they go? Can you share any of that information with us?
Sure, of course. My website is normanplotkin.com, NORMANPLOTKIN.com. I'm on social at Facebook, Norman Plotkin, CHT. CHT is Certified Hypnotherapist. Instagram, Facebook, Norman Plotkin Inc. But if you go to Norman Plotkin, you'll find it. And then Instagram is Norman Plotkin CHT. Twitter, LinkedIn is more of a professional one, but I'm there as well, just under my name. And I also have a second website called Mastermind Master Life, which is just .com, which is the same the title of my second book. And it's all about the history of hypnosis, what's going on in your body, what does science say, and how can you apply it in your life. And there's just enough science to quench your thirst, but not so much to bore you to death, right? So,
Yeah.
so those are my two books, Take Charge of Your Cancer and Mastermind, Master Life. They're on Amazon, available on Amazon in ebook and hard copy as well. And my office is in Sacramento, California, but I've done hypnotherapy with people via Zoom all over the world. And so hypnotherapy is something that can help everything. And so if I may, there's one thing I always like to share with
Of
everyone.
course.
And that is that a reminder, I give you the Reader's Digest version of A Course in Miracles. And that is, love is your birthright. It resides in your heart center. Its opposite is fear. In any moment, you can choose to come from a place of love or fear. Love gives rise to all positive emotions. Fear gives rise to all negative emotions. So I recommend that everyone come up with an image or an icon that just brings to mind love, and bring it into your heart space 40 times a day. It can be a red rose, a red heart, a peace sign, Jesus, a kitten, a puppy. It's different for everyone. Whatever image just brings to mind for you love, bring it in. And I'm serious about the 40 times a day, because fear is all around you. It comes at you from the television, from everywhere. We're in a fear-based state right now. And there's a lot of people walking around in hypnosis. Oftentimes I have to dehypnotize people before I can rehypnotize them. And so bringing love into your heart space is going to help you resist fear. You can't be in both at the same time. The law of opposites. And so it will pay dividends in your life, because control of the outer world is an illusion. It's our inner world, the only thing we can control. And if our inner world is characterized by love, we become very powerful.
I love that. That's very powerful, and it's a great statement. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Norman, for joining us today and for sharing all of your fantastic insight. This was a wonderful, really eye-opening experience for me, as well as I hope for the listeners also. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate your platform and the ability to get this message out, because I found my soul's purpose. It was a rough road to get here, but once you do, it's you don't want to sit, you don't want to rest, you want everyone to know.
Right. Yeah, that's so fantastic. And I'm so happy that you're doing what you're doing. And thank you everyone for listening today. And we will make sure that all of Norman's information and contact info is in the show notes. So if you weren't able to write that down, don't worry, we'll put that there. And again, thank you, Norman, so much. And thank you everyone for listening.